Hello there, and welcome to the Untitled Film Podcast with Callum and Johnny.
What's that accent?
It's not meant to be an accent because I don't like doing accents because people can say that.
Sounded a bit
racist.
stereotypical of like Eastern European at the beginning, and then it just went into a sort of clown, carnival barker. Hurry, hurry, hurry! Step right
Well,
up.
it wasn't meant to be anything specific, so it was just
So it was all part of the
random
magic.
words, all part of the magic. It's how I interestingly start the show because someone has to.
Well, somebody does have to.
And
you've been taking up the mantle of, well, I guess you could say carnival barker. You know, hurry, hurry, hurry! Step right up into the new exciting podcast.
One of us is called Callum and one of us is called Johnny. And which one are you, sir?
I'm Callum, and who are you, sir?
I'm Callum also.
Are you?
No, I'm yanking your chain.
Now let's bring out the bearded lady and the whatever they had in those carnivals.
Fair enough. And if you were going to see the modern equivalent of that kind of stuff, where do you think that you might find it?
Well, step right up to either Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook. We're under Untitled Film Podcast. And unlike usually, where we have quite quiet weeks on those on those social medias, we've had a slightly busier than usual week.
It's been blowing up.
It's been blowing up from all of three people. We had an answer to a question, which we don't usually have.
Which was follow up Reality Records.
Yes, yeah. Other than the usual spam of post that on Reality Records from the same usual spam bots. So we had an answer to a question, and also we had a nice little shout out on somebody else's podcast because last week I answered a question on a podcast I'm a fan of, and it was a story about that led to me saying, "Oh, and I have a podcast." I didn't intend to do it as a sort of as a networking thing. I really wasn't trying to do that, but they did say, "Oh, send us a message. Tell us what the name of your podcast is." They got in touch and they said, "So what's the name of your podcast?" And I told them, and I woke up on a Friday morning to see that they'd put it in the description. They put a link to it, and that was really nice of them because usually these things are so insincere. So I have to mention the podcast is called "You OK?" with Holly and Amy. I've been a fan of one of theirs for a long time now because they're both Amy, because they're both actresses. I'm not as familiar with the work of Holly, but hopefully now that I'm aware of her, I'll hopefully see her in things. But Amy's been in a few London West End Royal Shakespeare Company. She was in a production of Taming of the Shrew, which is notoriously difficult. And they're very funny. They've got
and shrews are hard to tame.
Indeed they are. Yes, indeed they are. You and Shakespeare would be slapping your thighs with just hilarity.
I made a very good Shakespeare observation today, but I won't bother you with that. I think you'll be bored by it.
Oh,
well, there was a poster up in Canterbury. There's a Shakespeare festival in Canterbury.
Oh, okay, cool.
And they were like, go and see Romeo and Juliet, Othello, and Don Quixote. And I was like, Don Quixote is not Shakespeare.
No, it's not. It's Cervantes.
So why is that at a Shakespeare festival? Anyway, that was my Sorry, this is a massive tangent, but that was my Shakespeare observation.
It was a very good tangent. I liked it. But yes, so go and listen to You OK with Holly and Amy. It's kind of an agony aunt podcast, but a lot funnier. They're very much inspired by Nora Ephron and Amy Poehler, so they've got a very light sense of humour. So thank you very much, Amy and Holly, for the shout out. That was really nice of you.
Thank you very much. And you also mentioned that we asked a question.
And we actually got a response, and a real response as well. So I was talking about literary works, and the idea was, great book, shame about the movie. And I put out a few examples. So the pictures I used were of The Dark Tower, the Stephen King book, The Lovely Bones, which is a really bad movie, but I'm told a very good book, and Captain Corelli's Mandolin. And our friend Howard got in touch with us and said, first off, Captain Corelli's Mandolin absolutely slaps. Secondly, World War Z shares nothing between the book and the film, apart from the name. They didn't even get the right zombies. Book walkers, film runners. And he's right. That film is just a generic action film. Yeah. They could have swapped out the title.
And I feel like they started off trying to make it more like the book and then just gave up. And
it does seem like that.
I feel like it got re-edited.
And rewritten and so many drafts.
And I think I think it had reshoots and things. But anyway, I would like to take umbrage with that Captain Corelli's Mandolin's good, though.
Yeah, I think it's rubbish as well.
It's not good.
That's why I used it as one of my examples.
Yeah.
Do you have an example?
Many. I'm going to say a bit of a rogue one in that Great Gatsby,
I did consider putting that in.
Because the thing is, Great Gatsby is one of my favourite books, and I would say arguably one of the best books of American literature. And the film is at best mid. Predominantly down to the fact that Nick Carraway is so horrendously cast. It's
very wet.
Maguire is just the wrong person. Nick Carraway, the moral structure and centre and core of the... I mean, it's the same problem with him playing Spider-Man, in my opinion, but that's another story.
He's very drippy.
He is. He has his place, and I don't think that Nick Carraway is that place. I've got lots of others. I think there's quite a few, isn't there, out there? But
there's. I was thinking of The Hobbit as well. Just how much they mangled it. But, you like the middle chapter?
Yeah, I like the middle chapter. I feel like it feels a bit like a roller coaster ride, and I like the barrels going down.
And when they've got
that's
when the dragon does his thing. Yeah.
The third one basically wasn't a movie.
It's the last 15 pages of the book stretched out over 2.5 hours.
Yeah. Oh, it's got the appendices.
Who cares?
Exactly. Anywho, what about you? Apart from the 3 you put on the website.
Well, those were my primary 3, and The Hobbit was the example that I was going to bring up, which I just did. So,
what about a film that's better than the book?
Oh, Fight Club.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah,
there are a couple of others.
That was just the first that sprung to mind. The not a book, but sorry, not a film, but a TV series, The Terror. I tried reading the book after watching the film, the TV show, because I love the TV show so much, and the book was incredibly dull. Just the dullest.
Just like the Terror, the TV show. 3 stars in The Guardian. Anyway, so yeah, speaking of newspapers and news, shall we move on to the news?
We shall indeed.
Callum, what is your first piece of news today?
Well, the Emmys literally just dropped.
That's what I've got.
I thought it might be.
So I've got quite a few I could have picked today, so it's not an issue. But yeah,
and it seems like the big winners, the big nominees are The White Lotus and Succession. I found it amusing.
Oh, what a shock that Succession got lots of...
What a shock indeed. But the funniest one was it's Best Supporting Actor in a Drama Series. All the nominees are either from The White Lotus or Succession. But there are other shows that are snuck in there. You got Melanie Linsky from Yellow Jackets. You got Pedro Pascal, the Internet's boyfriend.
Noms.
Yes, because the Bear straddles comedy and drama, but they've decided to put it as comedy, which I'm not 100% sure, but I can kind of see that.
I would say it's more drama, personally.
Yeah, me too.
Are they 30-minute episodes?
I think maybe that's their thinking, but that's less and less a thing now with streaming. Yeah, but
although it's not a streaming show in the States, is it? It's on FX.
Oh yes, of course. Yes, I was thinking because it's on Disney Plus here.
The new season drops on the 19th of July for those of you in the UK.
Fantastic! I really like the
first
season.
Out in the States, so you guys can fuck off.
Yeah, bugger off. Enjoy what you're going to enjoy. Daniel Radcliffe got his first Emmy nomination for the Weird Al movie.
Beef's got quite a few noms.
Yeah, Beef has got several.
Pedro Pascal for The Last of Us, SNL, Patagonia, Life on the Edge of the Water. 3 things.
He is the Internet's boyfriend. People do love Pedro Pascal. My colleagues at work they fancy him so much, and that's all they talk about is Pedro Pascal.
Jason Segel for Shrinking. I like Shrinking.
Yeah, that was a good one. I didn't see Harrison Ford, though, which I was surprised by. I thought, big name.
He's kind of a smaller character. Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds for Welcome to Wrexham. Must be best documentary series.
Yes, best factual series or whatever they call it. Because they do like to mangle the titles here. They don't just say best supporting actor in a drama. They say best supporting male in a dramatic performance, etc., etc., etc.
Jessica Chastain for George and Tammy, which I felt is way older than this year, but evidently not.
I think it might have come out the very start of the year. Maybe that's why. I do seem to recall it's been around for a while. Oh, really? Or maybe there must be. It's one of those things with these things. Like if it shows up at a festival on one year, then it's technically the year before, but doesn't get counted into the next year's things. It's all these cheating and stuff so they can make it eligible for one thing, but have it come out at a certain time of the year.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I think that probably gives us a good round up on that. Speaking of streaming, though, there's been quite a few trailers dropping for streaming services, one of which caught my eye this week was Napoleon.
I did see that.
Starring Joaquin Phoenix as Napoleon, which to me seems rather a rogue choice.
Yeah. I'd say the same. I wasn't convinced by him in the trailer.
No,
I have to say.
I just don't. I think it might have worked better if they had got a French actor to play Napoleon. I'm just going to put it out there.
Or maybe at least a lesser known actor, an actor who's kind of more character actor-y, maybe.
It looked visually quite interesting. Maybe it'll be excellent.
Well, that's Ridley
Maybe
Scott's bag, isn't it? Like, because he's the one directing this. Big set pieces, Kingdom of Heaven, Gladiator. He knows how to swing a sword.
A Robin Hood, or will it be a Gladiator?
Well, let's hope for the latter.
Let's hope for the latter, but I'm not quite convinced by the trailer. But yeah, that seemed to be one of those. There seems to be a few big budget trailers out this week. And what is your second piece of news, Callum?
My second piece of news, and every time there's a bit of news dropping about this film, I'm going to be reporting on it. There's more casting for Superman Legacy. We've got it's James Gunn, of course. So we have a few James Gunn regulars. We've got Nathan Fillion, surprise, surprise. He's been cast as one of the Green Lanterns. We got what's her name? Isabella Merced, who is going to play Hawkgirl. And I think this is the first time we're seeing Hawkgirl in a big superhero movie. And we have Eddie Gathegi as... who's he playing? Lost who he's playing now. That's embarrassing. Oh, Mr. Terrific, who's a superhero I have no clue about, never heard of him. But
how terrific!
But how he does like James Gunn. He does taking his left field choices. I think he's using Nathan Fillion as pretty much like a lucky rabbit's foot at this point. Got to bring on old Nate.
We shall see.
We shall see.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's nailed a Superman film since the.
Well, since 1978.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Although for television, it's absolutely crack-a-lacking because they've got this new anime, which is great, and they've got Superman and Lois, which is really good too.
Well, we shall see. We shall see.
We shall see.
What am I going to do? I've got quite a few bits of news, but another trailer I'm going to go for actually.
Cool.
Wonka.
Yes, I nearly did this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What to say about it? I feel like Chalamet is not the right person.
I thought the same.
I just don't think his version of Zany is not.
It's irksome.
Yeah, it is. And then it felt like a really boilerplate storyline. He's got to open a he likes making chocolate, does that boy? He's got to open a chocolate shop, has he? But to open that chocolate shop, he's got to go up against the big 3 chocolate shops in town. Oopie-doopie-doo, a-stoodly-doo-doo-doo. And I'm an Oompa Loompa, and once I've started dancing, I can't stop.
And they pinched that joke from The Simpsons. Dancing Pete, a quarter, he'll be dancing for hours.
But yeah, I wasn't convinced by the trailer.
I'd much rather Paul King do Paddington 3 and Sally Hawkins go back with him.
I know, I'm just like...
Can we not turn back time? Is that something that we can do?
Yeah, the thing is, it worries me that... Because Paddington 3 could have been the greatest franchise in the history of cinema.
Yeah, I agree.
It was... And I'm not convinced it's going to be now. And if it's not going to be because of this fucking awful Wonka movie, I am going to riot.
Paul King has a lot to answer for.
I'm going to make the French look like fucking the person that threw some confetti at George Osborne the other day. That is what's going to happen. If I don't get Paddington 3 as the greatest movie of all fucking time, I'm going to kill
that
people.
Someone's in... Paul King, you are in big trouble.
Yeah, I'm coming.
We're coming for you. So, I hope the money was worth it.
Yeah, I hope. And this fucking Wonka better be good as well.
You've got only about 6 months to spend it before Johnny just absolutely rages on you.
No, I'm not. I can't get into this. I can't get into this. I'm just so fucking angry. So yeah, that's why one of the reasons I went with the Wonka trailer was just rant about the fact that Paul King is wasting his life.
Yep,
wasting his life.
That's literally the worst 5 seconds of any podcast that's ever happened. Well, let's talk about something more pleasant, eh?
Let's talk about something more pleasant. So, Callum, what are our movies for this week?
Well, we've got a TV show and a movie, and they're both...
What? How can we have a TV show and a movie?
How can this be? And they're both adaptations of High Fidelity. the book by Nick Hornby.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of High Fidelity? What are you, a millennial who's not heard anything about High Fidelity? A millennial white man who's not heard anything about High Fidelity? I don't believe that. But yes, we've got the more recent one, the one that came out in Disney Plus here in the UK in 2020. And we got the John Cusack, Stephen Frears movie that came out in 2000, I believe. So we've got old and new. Who wants to take what? I don't mind. Which one?
I'll do the new.
Okay, take it.
You got Rob. She's cool. She owns a record shop, but she's just broken up with her long-term squeeze. And she's going to tell you her top 5 breakups. And then things are going to happen. Will they, won't they get back together? That's it. What do you think?
That's pretty succinct. I really like this. And I didn't expect to really like it because we've had our fingers burnt by either kind of late sequels or reboots, nostalgia baiting. And this is, I mean, let's not kind of say that this is some revolutionary piece. The fact that they're using the same gimmick of having Rob talk to the camera as was first done in High Fidelity 2000 is so that audiences can go, yes, High Fidelity, talking to the camera. The reason why this works so well is for a few reasons. Firstly, Zoe Kravitz as the gender-flipped version of Rob, in this one, Robin, is fantastic. I mean, I've always liked her. I've liked her for a long time. She's great as Catwoman recently, but she's so good at just displaying this ennui, this general funk that she can't get out of, partly because of her breakup, but partly because she's so self-sabotaging that it's just a series of events that go on. Like early on, she goes out on a date with a guy played by Jake Lacey, who's a very straight-laced guy. People make fun of him because he wears khakis, he's boring. And she's just about to bail on him until she realizes she left her phone behind. And so she has to make an excuse to go back and get it and not make it look like she was trying to bail. But other than that, I think what it's done is it's taken a lot of the best elements of the movie, the narration, the sarcastic dialogue, the nerdy music references, and absolute bangers of needle drops. And it's matured things a lot. If there is a problem, and the difficulty here is like trying not to compare it too much to the movie, because we're going to talk about the movies. We don't want to kind of well, the movie did this, the TV show did that. And I prefer the TV show. I prefer the movie.
I almost said, let's do a flip and do the movie first today. I contemplated it.
Yes, well, I could understand doing that. But so I'll be careful about how I describe it. But if there's one, and I'll only do this one comparison. If there's one thing that the movie has, is it has a very adolescent view of romance, sex, relationships. And there's a reason why it was one of our favorite films when we were 17. Whereas this one takes on a lot more mature point of view, not just from the point of view of Rob, but also the two best friend characters who work in the record store with her. In the film, they're like, lol, they're dweebs. Whereas in this, at first, I almost thought, God, they're too cool. These two characters missed the point. They're too cool. I want to hang out with these people, where in the movie, I didn't want to hang out with Jack Black, and I forget the name of the other guy, the other actor. I don't want to hang out with those losers, whereas this I did. But then, as we hear more about their stories and what's going on with them, they're a lot more complex, as is Rob, and it just deals with things in a lot more adult way that's suitable for the 2020s. And I really appreciated that. And that's why it started winning me over so much, is I found myself so engaged with their relationships and their lives and their stories. But Johnny, what did you think?
Yes, all right.
Zing.
No, I really like it. I really like the central performance from Zoe Kravitz. I thought that it did a good, and again, this is where it's got hard to not confirm.
Yeah, it's going to be tricky.
I think it did. I've read the book a few times over the years, and although not for a while, admittedly, and I kind of, obviously, getting a book in, this is just a generic statement, getting a book into a film, there always has to be stuff left on the cutting room floor. And obviously, I think because of that, they managed to do better the B plots and things with the secondary characters in the TV show, which you just didn't have time to do in the movie. So they felt more fleshed out, especially when you got a few episodes in. And particularly with her kind of best friend character, he had a really good episode, like a whole episode that was his, that I thought was really well done. I liked how they and actually it's a bit not to give the ending away, but there's not a season 2, unfortunately, and there was clearly going to be a season 2,
yes,
or from the writing point of view, there was going to be a season 2. So I think that I think that they had set those characters up with some good stuff to do in season 2, and you could see where the storylines were going. I thought it was more mature. I think again, this is where it's quite hard to review it without talking about the film as well, but I think it did a good job of fixing some of the things that were wrong in the film. And I probably will talk about the TV show a little bit more when we talk about the film.
Yeah, we'll probably end up comparing the two.
But yeah, I think it really works, and I really like it. And like you say, the soundtrack slaps. Like, it is tune after tune after tune. The use of Debbie Harry and things is very good, very well done. I really enjoyed it. It's the second time I've watched it. When it came out, I was like, you know what? I really enjoyed this. You should watch this, Callum. And Callum didn't watch it.
Drags my feet.
And this is why I sometimes have to do is force Callum's hand by saying, right, we're going to use that on this episode of the podcast.
Just wait till I get in to watch The Terror, everyone.
Yeah. Good luck trying, mate. What you don't know is I've watched it all and really liked it, but just won't tell you. I haven't.
No, I thought so. I'm really gutted that it got cancelled, really. I would have liked to have seen, I don't know how many seasons you could have got out of it. I can't imagine more than like 2 or 3. I imagine 2 or 3. These relationship drama comedies, about 2 or 3. Catastrophe was 3.
But it kind of felt like it got to a point where you could see where it was going to go for a second or third season. And I think it would have worked really well. And it's a shame they didn't get to finish that story. It would just be nice, even if they said, right, you can have 4 episodes to finish it off. They could have completed it in that, I think. Or they should have said, we're just going for a mini-series from the start and not left it at a cliff. That's the bit of it. That's the hard thing. Like, in a way, it's hard to recommend going and watching it, because I'm like, you'll really enjoy this 5 hours of content. And then you'll be like, fuck's sake, why isn't there another 5 hours of content on her?
It's a bitter pill, certainly. And I do have a couple of teeny tiny niggles, just for the sake of balance. I sometimes think they overplay a joke, or overstretch a joke, or overstretch a scene, where the benefit of the film is that because they had to be tight and snappy, they play a joke to the point where they know they get the biggest laugh and then they stop. So one of the best moments in the film is when he's imagining when the ex-boyfriend comes up with the new fiance, and she has fantasies about killing her and breaking a bottle over her head, and that's a joke from the film as well. And the joke I think they play it 3 times, and this they did it like 6 or 7.
Yeah,
I was like, all right, come on.
I thought that went on a beat too long. I was like, sure, I didn't do this many times in the movie.
And they also they bring over the worst subplot of the film, of course, in the film, which is a film original, where movie Rob helps these skater punks who steal a bunch of records from their shop, and he ends up realizing that they're great musicians, and he helps them out. And the same thing happens here. And again, it's like the one thing that I wish you didn't bring over. This is the one thing that you brought over.
I actually like that plot.
Oh, you do? Oh, yeah, fair enough.
I quite like it. I'm just like, I like, the reason I like it is because I think it's the whole point of his character is a professional critic. He's a critic.
And
he makes these lists. He does these things, and this is the proof that he's or they, because I should say they, because it's for both of them. It's the proof that they've changed because they have put something out in the world for the first time that they believe in.
Yes,
and it's not just them snarking on things. And I think that's why it kind of hits home with millennials, because I think Gen Zers, which is what John Cusack's character, particularly in the film, is that Gen Zers were not Gen Z, sorry, that's the Gen X. I'm meant to be saying.
Sorry,
were known for being snarky and then kind of like not really doing anything their own at the time. Obviously, some have gone on to do things of use, And some of them are horrible people. That's just life. But anyway, and I think that I actually, from that point of view, I think it shows great. But I think the problem is this doesn't get to play it out properly because it doesn't get finished. That storyline starts and it starts to put the pieces together. And with the other friend who she starts to kind of have pieces with them put together as well, which could be an interesting place to go. I think it's one of those things. I think it would have worked a lot more, made a lot more sense if they'd have got another season.
Yes.
And that to me is the biggest crux
It's a
of it.
very bitter pill.
It does take, the other thing I would say is it takes 3 episodes to get going, but at the end of the day, something taking 3 episodes to get going is not bad.
Shows do that. I also like that they brought over some of the nice, cute references to the film without over-egging things. Like, I will now sell 3 copies of, and this it's a different band, but they do have the beta band play at least 2 episodes, and a few cute references like that.
I also liked, so the ending credit songs is, if you feel like you're falling in love,
This will be forever.
And the whole last episode uses that a few times as a bit of a beat, which I quite liked as well.
Yes.
I also like, when they're like, oh, that's the annoying customer, and then the annoying customer is actually like the brother's mate and stuff. I quite like that. I like the way that kind of twisted. So no, I really liked it, and I'm pissed off that there wasn't another one. But
it's absolutely smashing.
So yeah, I think that's the review for it.
I think so.
After a very solid dancing act of not treading on our own toes there.
Yeah.
And with that, buy these things. And you're not going to buy anything for $1.
I won't, but I will sell 3 copies of whatever it is they were selling.
Wow.
That's a reference to the movie, everyone. So should we do the plot line for the movie? All right. How many times do you think you've blown the mic out this episode? At least 3 by my count. You done?
I was referencing the TV show. I was going on a beat too long.
Yes.
Anyway,
yes. Okay.
Tell us about the movie.
Well, the movie.
What happens?
There's this guy, Rob. He's just broken up with his ex-girlfriend. With his girlfriend. Are they going to get back together? Are they not? Will they? Won't they? And some misadventures happen along the way. So, Johnny, what did you think about the film of High Fidelity?
Yes, all right.
Yes.
I actually think it's the film I've watched the most in my life.
It could be mine as well.
Admittedly, diminishing amounts as time has gone on. When I was like 15, 16, I probably watched it like 4 times a year. And I watched it probably twice a year when I was at university. And then it's gone down to like once a year. Now it's like probably like once every 2 years. So, I mean, that would state that I quite like it. And I kind of identify with the characters. In a lot of ways, I don't necessarily think, we always talk about those things like Garden State and Catcher in the Rye, or those things that when you're like 18 are like the most profound thing that's ever happened to me.
It just speaks to me.
And there is an element of that to it. And there is an element of when you grow older, you're like, there's some toxicity to these things going on. But I still really like it. I've still always wanted to own a record store. You can't see this, but I'm sitting in front of a wall of records currently.
A wall.
What would you call that?
A few shelves?
A few shelves. That's more than a few
suggests
shelves.
a wall.
Wow, I think that's nearly a wall.
A third of a wall.
If I turned it round, that could be a wall. If I turned it on the side...
I think that's still a third of a wall.
And they're not all of my records, anyway. There's a good 400 records sitting behind me, and then I've got another 200 in another room. There's a chunk of records in my house. That's a thing I've spent way too much of my money on in the past. So yeah, I have to admit my quantity of records I've bought has greatly decreased in the last 5 years. With the amount of times I've watched High Fidelity has also greatly decreased. There seems to be a bit of a correlation, but that's another story. But yeah, anyway, so I love a record, and I've always wanted to own a record shop, and so I think there's a lot of identifying there. Again, all the music slaps. No Debbie Harry in this, but you have got Bruce Springsteen, which is also cool. It's one of Jack Black's first starring roles, and he actually, in the movie, he's a bit annoying, but then his purpose for being in the movie comes very clear in the last 10-15 minutes, and he's perfect for that role. John Cusack's perfect for that role. Joan Cusack's perfect for her role as his sister. But I do think at the centre of it, there is the relationship that's trying to be saved. I think there's a lot less to be saved than there is in the relationship in the TV series, ironically, and a lot less to be saved than there is in the TV series in the book. It feels at times a bit toxic, a bit like mother and child almost at times, which I always think is a bit creepy when you get that kind of relationship. But yeah. Although you could argue what he does to her in the film is not as bad as what she does to him in the TV show, but I don't want to give too much away. But yeah, what did you think?
Much the same. I've probably worn out various VHS and DVDs over the years of this film. It's endlessly watchable. If it has something above the TV show, is that a lot of what the TV show does is take some of the ideas that this film originated, like it's directed by Stephen Frears, and there was a decision from John Cusack, who's one of the screenwriters and producers. He wanted to go, when he was pitching this to directors, he didn't want to go for kind of general comedy directors, which I think the studio was sort of pushing him towards because they read the script and said, romantic comedy. He said, no, this is a proper movie based on a really great book. I'm going for Oscar-winning directors. So they went for Stephen Frears, and Stephen Frears came up with the idea of, instead of having it just be narrated, it's spoken to you, because he saw a clear parallel between the cruelty and the nastiness of a character like Alfie, a narcissist who wants you to look at him all the time, and between Rob. And that's one of those...
Definitely narcissist.
Yeah, definitely a narcissist. And that's one of those masterstrokes that you get when you, instead of hiring some kind of workman-like director, instead you hire Stephen Frears. And there's a textual feel to the film. I mean, just watching a film that's shot on film, I know it's becoming more and more of a nostalgic thing, but it has a warmth, much like the records that they use in the film. The cinematography is great. The choice of Chicago replacing London, I actually think Chicago worked better as a London proxy than New York. If one teeny tiny niggle again about the TV shows, that the New York in the TV show felt like quite a generic New York.
Very generic New
York.
Yeah,
like it felt like
Electric
TV.
Ladyland.
Yeah, exactly. A TV New York.
Bodega.
Look, that's Jack from the band The Bleachers. It's the producer. Wow. What are you doing here? Whereas this felt kind of lived in. It felt because I think that John Cusack lived in Chicago before he moved to Hollywood. So it feels earthy. It feels kind of has a bit more grit under the fingernails. But you're right, the central relationship is quite toxic, especially when we watch it in the perspective of our 30s. Also, Rob is such an angry man, and none of those things get resolved.
It's a little bit insully at times.
It's very creeping up that way. If there's one reason why I'm not complaining about it as much as we did with Michael Cera in Scott Pilgrim, it's because they've matched the performer to the content.
Yeah, I agree.
And John Cusack, if there's something he can do, it's angry, incelly guys that, under the right light, if you squint, yeah, they're kind of cool. Oh, wait, they're kind of creepy. He does angry. I think
it's a fine line.
A fine line to walk.
And at times it's fine, and times
it wobbles a bit.
One little leg is dipping into
and actually,
the
I think in our Scott Pilgrim review, we said if this was made in the 80s, they would have hired John Cusack.
Mm-hmm. And he would have been better at it.
Yeah, and he's just such a great person at playing that sort of angry, insulting person. And it's balanced well by the, he calls them the musical moron twins, the two employees, who are a lot more broad in this, whereas in the TV show, they're cool and you get development. And here they serve one purpose. They're supposed to be dweebs that you laugh at until they start moving on with their lives. One goes into a band, the other gets a girlfriend, and Rob doesn't. There's one of my favorite shots in the film is when they're saying, oh, we should go to the bar. Oh, actually, I can't. I've got a date. Oh, actually, Rob, I can't either. I've got a plan for my band. And then Rob, the person who thinks he's the coolest guy in the room, stands in the middle of a room alone. And I think that's such a nice... And again, that comes from having a director who is an artist rather than a workman-like director. So the earthiness and the performance of the material...
I would argue it's important that there's a storyline where he gets the skater kids and puts the record out, because that does show growth.
So the earthiness and the textuality to it is what carries it, and by matching the right performers to the people. So it kind of offsets the more gross parts, but that relationship should not have been saved, and it's easily the weakest part of the film.
And this is really hard to not spoil the TV show, but it's one area I think the TV show feels like, obviously there's not a second season, so I don't know quite where it goes, but it feels like it could be differing.
Yes, well, by introducing the character by Jake Lacey in the TV show, they've opened a new avenue that didn't exist in the film. In the film, his goal is only ever to get back his ex-girlfriend, and that's it. Whereas that's her goal in the TV show until this branch comes out. And I think that's all we really can say without spoiling it.
Yeah. Going back to where we were going to talk about maybe more comparing the beats between the show and the TV, the film. The film is tighter, and it has to be tighter, but it is tighter.
Yes.
Like we said, the TV show does sprawl at times, and I do feel there's certain episodes that almost like have their own life that are nothing to do with the film, and they are great, a lot of them actually. But there's also ones where they've gone, right, we're going to take these 3 scenes from the film and make it into a whole episode, and actually they probably have 5 minutes to fill.
I remember saying, I was making notes, and I said, this is a 10-episode TV show where each episode is 33 minutes long. It's begging to be 8 episodes and 25 minutes.
Yeah, I could see that. I think that it's not tight. And the film is pretty tight. Like, it's not, I don't look at the film and think, well, you could cut that out, you could cut that out, you could cut that out. It does a good job of distilling the book it's about 2 hours, isn't it, the film?
Yeah, roughly.
Does a good job of distilling a fairly thick book into a film in 2 hours. So, yeah, and overall, they're both excellent pieces of work, and they both have their pluses and minuses. I do think that the TV show felt more up to date. I do think that the film feels a bit aged now.
It does, a little bit.
But yeah, there are things that I like about the film. Like, I agree with you on Chicago. I think Chicago, it felt like you were in Chicago, whereas the
TV land.
The TV thing felt, yeah. I honestly got about 4 episodes in and went, oh yeah, this is meant to be New York in this one, and I hadn't really even thought about it until that point. It was only because I was Googling, does the Allied bar exist, which is the bar they go to in the TV series. And it doesn't, unfortunately, because it looks quite cool.
Too bad.
Yeah. Some of the stuff exists, though, some of the places. Yeah. Any more to say?
No, I don't think so. I think we've wrapped her all up.
We might end up with quite a big sum up because we're comparing the two a bit more. So, Callum, what would you score the High Fidelity TV show as?
I'd say 8 out of 10. It's very close to being... Some episodes are 10 out of 10. And had it gone on further, it probably would start to creep up as maybe one of the great relationship drama, comedy, dramedies, along with things like Catastrophe, and several of the other big ones, and recently Colin from Accounts that just came out in BBC iPlayer. It could have,
which may be reviewed in a few weeks.
We have been umming and erring about it. It nearly gets there, and there's the odd niggle, so nothing really to take away too many points. Zoe Kravitz is great. The whole cast is uniformly great. You really do get into their lives. You really want them to succeed, even when they do horrible things, or at least when Rob does horrible things. It's just really good fun, and I'd suggest it to anyone listening.
I also am going to give it an 8 out of 10. I pretty much agree with you. I think if it was the second season, I think it could have been a 9 or a 10 out of 10. Like, it got really good momentum in the last 5 or 6 episodes. But the first few, it did take a while to get going. It is a bit flabby at times. And yeah, I think the New York thing is a bit blah. And yeah, I just think it's a shame it didn't get longer to play out and see where it went. So I agree. And the movie.
The movie, for different reasons, is also an 8 out of 10. Because it is really, really solid. There are things that detract from it a little bit now, but they carry it through with the right performances and earthiness to it. A proper director at the helm, just clever decisions about the filmmaking. Everything about the filmmaking is pretty damn solid. So just a few story beats that maybe have aged a bit poorly recently. You have well-matched performances between John Cusack being angry and Jack Black being irksome but funny irksome. When he first walks in the first scene, when he's going downy downy down, you're giggling immediately, and it's a nice balance.
Yeah, it is.
But no, it's an 8 out of 10. Again, it nearly gets there. It's endlessly watchable. Otherwise, we wouldn't have watched it something like 400 million times. But no, again, if you haven't already seen it, which I highly doubt, if you're in your late 20s, early 30s, you've probably seen this movie 100 times. And if you haven't, shame. But if you haven't, if you're one of those people I've shamed...
I'm just going to say a slight sidestep to that. I think that if you're a white male...
A white male, yes.
In your early 30s, you've probably seen it hundreds of times. I think outside of that, not everyone has seen it hundreds of times. Yes. I'm just going to put that out there. I think
not shame for you, although maybe a little bit, tiny, but 10%.
There's no reason you shouldn't, Will. It's not just for white men. Well, I don't think it is anyway, but I feel like it has that kind of click within that community.
Yes, for obvious reasons, considering the protagonist. But no, it's really solid. Do go seek it out if you haven't, and shame on you.
You know what's really annoying? I also am going to give it an 8 out of 10. I was like, no! I was hoping you were going to go for 7 or something. I think unfortunately the central relationship is flawed, but I just like everything else about it. So that's why it's not a 10 out of 10. That's why it's an 8 out of 10. But other than that, really like it. So, yeah. So 8 out of 10's all round for everything. It's very 8 out of 10.
It's an 8 day.
On the thumb up meter, it's a motorcycle driving by. No, it's pretty
it's a hand
there.
Wavering kind of towards the upper ends, but not quite up.
And all of these are available to watch on Disney Plus.
Yes.
So get watching them, because something tells me that the TV series may get purged at some point, because it just feels like the kind of show that probably will get purged. A one-season
show that was a bit of a flop. I don't think anybody's going to be...
I think the old purging shredder will be going soon, so I'd get on there and watch it now.
The mouse is going to be sticking that in the bin soon. Yeah. So watch it now. Or torrent it.
Now. Bow, 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 bow. Bye. Wasting his life.